Welcome to the Tom Heck for Governor Digital Town Hall. Drop into the group chat and join the conversation. This is your chance to get to know Tom, make a comment, or ask him anything you want to know about his plans as the next governor of Nevada. And Tom will take your comments and your questions and answer them live. If you'd like to join the Tom Heck team as a volunteer, to make a donation, or both, please visit electheck.com. Now, without any further ado, let's get the show rolling. Welcome to the Tom Heck for Governor Digital Town Hall.
And welcome, everybody. My name is Tim Kramer. I'm the campaign strategist and campaign manager for Tom Heck. We are doing a digital town hall tonight. Let's go ahead and bring Tom in, and we can have a conversation with him. Now, keep in mind that as we're going through tonight, the thing that you want to do is make sure that you join the group chat. As you're chatting tonight, you can chat with other people in the chat log, but you can also talk directly to Tom, and we will pull questions out throughout the night to talk directly to Tom. If you've got a question about what you want for Nevada, what's gone wrong? What hasn't gone right? Well, the thing to do tonight is to talk to Tom Heck and ask him direct. So without further ado, let me introduce you to Tom Heck. Tom, what is the big news that you've been tracking today? What have you been doing today that will keep people excited about the Heck campaign?
Well, I continue to set up interviews, to talk to various news agencies. I'm very much interested in talking to voters wherever I go. I hand out cards and tell them, check out my website. And interesting to me is 4 out of 5 people that go to my website walk away saying they're going to vote for me, because Nevadans, they are tired of career politicians who have failed them over the years, and they'll fail them again and again if given the opportunity. So they're looking for something different. I want to get my message out. So I'm encouraging all of you that are listening tonight, send $25, $50 so I can get my word out to all you out there that are tired with the same old, and want something different in their governor for the future.
One of the big issues that has been plaguing not only Nevada, but other states around the country is the educational system sucking so bad. Nevada has a really bad record right now. They are 50th in the nation, and if you put Puerto Rico into the mix, they're 51st. So as governor, what's your plan to turn things around and get the educational system in Nevada back working again?
Well, really sad that you know the career politicians in Nevada really had to work at it to maintain their position as 50th or 51st. Nevada has spent 40% more money in the last 8 years. Nevada spends the same amount of money as Florida per capita, per student. They are third and we're 50th. It is not a money problem. It's an accountability problem. The problem is the Department of Education in Nevada has abdicated their responsibilities. They hand out the money and walk away. Unlike you send your son or daughter to the store to buy some groceries for you. You hand them some money, but you also give them a list of things to buy and why you're buying them. And then when he comes back, you review the list and see what he got and if there's anything he's missing, and then you talk about it, and then you look for the change. The Department of Education sends out the money. They wash their hands of it. And they expect something to happen? Well, under my administration, we'll send money. We'll partner with each school district on what they're going to buy, and then they're going to have goals and objectives as to why and what they're spending that money on. And then there's going to have outcomes beyond that to show how that's going to improve Nevada's standing nationally and getting us out of 50th in the nation. This is unacceptable. Nevadans deserve to expect a promising future for their children, and we can do better, and we will do better.
Well, let's talk about so talking about the situation of children doing better. What's your view on education versus lifetime earning? I mean, it only goes to figure that the more education you have, the higher earning potential you have. So why hasn't the state of Nevada up to this point done something about getting this educational system fixed for the people of Nevada?
Because career politicians are too busy keeping their job rather than doing their job. They don't understand how to move bureaucracies. They don't understand how to make bureaucracies improve. And so that's the problem. And yes, you're absolutely right. children over a lifetime who have high school education, right now in Nevada, only 13% of Nevada's K through 12 children are prepared for college. 13%. So that's, we haven't even gotten past high school in Nevada. And then of course, college, and then there's a graduate degrees, but each one of those is a big bump in salary and a much improved lifestyle and lifetime earnings for the families, and then subsequent expectations for their children as well. You know, Nevada's can do better, has gotten to do better. And if we don't do education in Nevada, it's criminal. We are destroying our children's future by not fixing our education program. And it's not a money issue. It's an accountability issue. And we're going to take that head on.
Well, let's talk about that. So one of the big questions that comes up a lot about education is when we start talking about money, there's two schools of thought, right? There's the school of thought, let's take a look at it and see what's going wrong and fix that issue. And the other school of thought is throw more money at it. When you become governor, Tom, what is your plan to address the issue of education? Everybody said that they're going to do certain things, but yours is a little bit more, let's say, revolutionary. Share that with the people.
Well, I like to tell everyone that, you know, I'm an engineer, so we have a very systematic approach to problem solving, fixing things. And one of the things we do as an engineer, the first thing we have to do is to identify the problem. Now, career politicians, they focused on symptoms. Why are we still 50th? Because they keep throwing money at symptoms. So my plan is, if you look at the way we've layered education, right now we teach to special eds, which is a group, and we teach them separately. And then my plan is to teach the lower performing students separately, the middle performing students separately, and the top performing students separately. Well, why do we do that? That's a systematic approach, so that each teacher in each group can teach to that level. Teachers are focused on the lower level learning students to bring them up to snuff, the middle level students, and the higher level students. Right now in Nevada, the best we can hope for is some level of mediocrity. Unacceptable to me, and I'm sure it's unacceptable to you as the voters and the parents. So unacceptable, we can do better.
So your plan basically is to raise all standards by teaching to specific standards, correct?
Right. We can do better. I mean, the problem is one, if all your expectations are in Nevada is that, well, we're going to be 50th and that's the best we're going to do, but we'll throw a little more money at it to make the voters feel good. Well, it's not okay. I'm a problem solver. We're going to find the problem, identify the problem. We're going to identify alternate solutions. The ones I've talked about are key. And then we're going to institute those systematic solutions. And anybody in our way, we're going to push them out of the way and move on. Parents deserve better. Children deserve better. And the parents deserve to spend money and invest in their children's future. And I'm all for that.
Okay, so one of the big questions that comes up with education right now, of course, besides the funding, and that's a totally separate issue. That's a financial engagement type conversation. Let's talk about the ideology that is going through schools today, in particular CRT. Now, a lot of schools say, "Hey, we're not teaching CRT," but then we find out they are. What is your position as governor of Nevada on the role of CRT in school?
Day one, Executive Order 1 eliminates CRT and all associated socialistic efforts by schools. Schools need to focus on how to teach children better, finding better and more improved ways of being successful for children, and finding ways to get them to the level they need to be at. This systematic approach is key, but we cannot continue down this path of failed efforts that same old. What's the saying? If you do the same thing over and over again and expect a different outcome, that's insanity. And we have a lot of insanity going on in Nevada, and a lot of programs are failing because no one wants to take on the real issue and make it work. So we're going to hold school districts accountable for their goals and objectives, their outcomes, and then we're going to measure what they spent their money on. And if they're not spending the money on what they said they're going to spend it on, then we're going to pull it. And in the future, we're not going to trust them to do what they say they're going to do.
Well, one of the things that you have to do as governor, when you're running as a candidate for governor, I should say, is that you fill out a lot of forms, don't you? You do a lot of questionnaires.
Yeah, we do a lot of questionnaires so the voters will really know. But truthfully, I would rather do these Monday night town hall meetings because I can actually talk to voters and hear what they're interested in. Just because there's somebody's survey, and oftentimes these surveys are skewed to some political interest, I want to hear directly from the voters. I want to answer your questions and tell you what I think about the issues that you care most about, not with somebody with a pencil and paper that's drawing them up and sending them to me.
Well, that's why I was bringing that up, is that you recently got a questionnaire from the NSEA, which is the union for the school teachers in the state of Nevada. And it was interesting in going through that. What was the one subject matter of all the things they asked about? What was the one thing they didn't ask about?
They asked entirely, it was about raises for teachers. And I want the teachers to make a good living. But I saw very few questions in there that talk how NSEA was going to improve student learning, improve teachers' outcome, improve special education efforts for teachers, how to get the teachers up to the level they need to be. There was nothing in there talking about the students and improving their learning. Nothing. It was always about, are you going to support more salary? Are you going to support preventing others from making more money that aren't in the union? I mean, it was a whole union focus. This is about the kids. We care about the kids, and we want to make life better for the kids and their families. So that was disappointing. We're going to post my answers because my answers were about, what about the kids? I mean, what we forget is that, I'm for teachers, but they work 8 months of a year. There is no other profession in Nevada government that works 8 months of a year. So you got to multiply their salary by 1.4. You multiply 60,000 by 1.4 and you get about $84,000, $85,000. My dad was a teacher. He worked in the summer construction. So yes, teachers can make more money. Yeah, but they can work the summer as well. And it needs to be NSEA. I'm telling you, this needs to be about the students and how you're going to facilitate better student learning, better outcomes for students, and holding teachers accountable that aren't measuring up to snuff. We need to do better for our children and our children's future.
Well, I found it interesting in their questionnaire. One of the things that they kept asking you about is whether you were going to work with them. Whether you were going to work with them. What's your position on the special interest groups wanting you to work with them? Shouldn't that be the other way around?
Well, you continually hear this thing about reaching across the aisle, and Republicans continue to say that they've done that for years and years. All I can ask Nevadans, look what the Republicans have done. Has reaching across the aisle got you anywhere? So no, when the NSEA and other special interest groups align with our goals and objectives to meet the needs of Nevadans, yes, I will work with them. But when they don't, I'm going to push them to work with me to support those things that are in the best interest of the children and Nevadans to make their lives of living, working, and playing in Nevada better across the board.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. One of the questions that comes up with the educational deal, and Joey Gilbert is pushing this, he wants to break up the Clark County schools into different school districts as opposed to the one school district that they're in currently. What's your position on that?
Well, I agree with that. I mean, it has to be carefully done. But right now, there's so little accountability in Clark County. I think that's the biggest problem. When you have so much money, I think it's billions of dollars in Clark County. There's no way to hold people accountable, and there's nobody owning the problem. One of the things in my entire career, Air Force Academy was a leadership school, spending almost 23 years in Air Force, exercising leadership. This is about ownership, and key to leadership is having ownership. Right now, we have one daddy rabbit in Clark County, but he really doesn't affect the tentacles of far out into all the other places in Clark County. And the problem is that there's no accountability and there's no ability to rein in and keep track of spending. So we need to put these out in bite-sized pieces so that parents have input and that the best can be provided to the children in their learning. And we need to do better. And I think it's a good idea to look at that, but it's not something we can do overnight.
I remind people as they join tonight to come in and either comment on the electtech.com. You can jump into the private chat there, or the group chat there. You can also do it on Facebook, to where you can chat directly inside the timeline of the video that we're watching. Don't forget, as you're watching tonight, to please go to electtech.com and make a donation. $5, $10, $15, $20, $25. Everything helps. So moving on.
Yes, and your efforts to donate will allow me to get my message out and my story out to other people like you who are tired of the same old in Nevada and want something different. And I'm that something different.
Well, that brings us back around to the issue of where we are currently. The situation of the education system inside the state of Nevada being so poor. It didn't happen last year. And a lot of the candidates now are trying to say, well, it's because of COVID. But Nevada has been at this level. They've been scoring in the 48th, 49th, 50th place for years. So when you say accountability, explain to the people exactly what accountability means.
Accountability is, first off, setting up a program for how the money is spent, the goals and objectives, and the outcomes. There's an axiom in leadership: he who controls the money controls the outcome. So accountability starts with the money. And if the money doesn't flow because a particular school district is inept, has fraud, waste, and abuse, is not teaching the children, has not done what they said they were going to do, then I will control the money and cut the money to them. And at some point in time, when the schools don't have any money because they're failing, the money will go elsewhere. That's why I support school vouchers, because I need the parents' help. The money follows the child, that puts the parents in control of the outcome. The parents don't like the cool school, they take their child and the money to the school they want them to go to. Well, why is that important? The answer that the Democrats give and some Republicans is that, well, that takes money from the public schools. Well, let's see. If you take money from a school that's not performing to the level the parents demand, and 2 students leave, 10 students leave, 100 students leave, 500 students leave, nothing's left. The school closes. What that allows for? That allows for the parents, one, in the first place, to get their children educated. And in the second place, it allows me to get involved with that school, shut it down, and start it over with new administration at a smaller level to get them in the mode of teaching children. I've looked at agendas for the various school districts. 95% of what's on the agendas has nothing to do with improvement in student learning, improved outcomes for students, improved futures for students. And one of the shortcomings in schools is that, we dump the kids out at 18 and they're on their own. We need to prepare them for adulthood, and they need to know how to prepare budgets. They need to know how to finance. They need to know how to buy cars. That's something that should be a high school course that's mandatory. And I will issue executive order to make that mandatory, that children are prepared to walk out the door and hit the ground running and be able to take care of themselves and function in the adult world.
So explain to the people watching tonight why you deem education so important, and kind of give some background on your education and the success that you've had based on that education.
Well, I grew up in a family with high expectations, and I'm sure most families that are listening out there have the same high expectations. My dad had a bachelor's degree. He had a graduate degree in history. Mom had a bachelor's degree, and that led me to understand the importance of education, because as you get older, you tend to pyramid into being able to do fewer and fewer things. When you increase your education, you increase the choices you have. I have 2 graduate degrees and a postgraduate degree, so I've always had a lot of options for things that I can do. I want that for Nevadans. I want that for parents, and that's what our children deserve. I have always believed that education is so important to the future, and as we talked about earlier, that improves the earnings across the lifetime for all these children, and ultimately their ability to raise families successfully.
We're about 20 minutes into tonight's show, and we want to keep moving things forward here, so we don't want to focus 100% on education, but it's probably one of the most important issues facing the families in Nevada.
Well, it is, because one of the problems we have, Tim, is that, and the audience out there, is that, we have created, we have brought in a lot of businesses to Nevada, but right now, Nevadans don't have the skill set to take many of those jobs.
Right.
So not only are we shooting ourselves in the foot by not being educated, but not having the ability to take higher paying jobs in Nevada. That's the other thing that's happening. And my goal is to always hire the best of the best. And I want Nevadans to become the best of the best.
Well, that's the issue, right? If you don't have a workforce capable of performing the job, then manufacturers or people who create jobs, job creators, just don't bring those jobs to your state. They just won't do it.
Or they have to bring out of state employees to come in and take the job. So how did that benefit Nevadans?
It did not.
I'm always about benefiting the Nevadans and their livelihood.
So let's talk about real quick donations. If you're on tonight and you're looking to get rid of the career politicians, if you're wanting change, we've been talking about it for a while that you can't keep sowing the same seeds and expecting a different crop. You're gonna reap what you sow. So with that being the case, these career politicians continue to do the same thing over and over and over again. I've worked in politics for the last 15 years at the highest levels, and it never ceases to amaze me how people can say one thing one day and then flip-flop the next day and then explain why you're wrong for them lying. And that's what we've got in this country across the board. So, Tom,
but it's in Nevada. Not only that, but we're corrupt in Nevada, and the Republican Party is corrupt. They're spending money fighting amongst themselves, and guess where that money's coming from? That's coming from your donations to the party that they're using for lawyers to fight amongst themselves.
One of the reasons that we're doing these town halls is to kind of expand and expound on what Tom is talking about, both in his websites and the commercials that'll be running in the next few weeks. It's important for the people of Nevada to understand that when a politician stands up and says something, for example, I'm going to hold people accountable. I, as a voter, want to know what that means. What do you mean by accountability? What are you going to do? You're telling me that you're going to take action, but you don't tell me specifics of what that action is. And that happens time and time again. Then when they get into office, what ends up happening, Tom, is they don't do anything, right? And we get a situation where we have an educational system in the state of Nevada that has been languishing in last for years. This isn't something new. This is something for the last 20 years that they've had a problem with the educational system in Nevada. So it's important not only to the kids of Nevada, but to the adults of Nevada, because those jobs that they need to support their families aren't going to be there if the educational system doesn't prepare those workers for the jobs that are going to come into the state. So
I can expand upon that, Tim. One of the data that recently came out, I talked about only 13% of K through 12 are prepared for college. But only 19% are proficient in science. Only 28% are proficient in math. How do we expect our children to be successful with those kind of numbers? And we've got the same thing at the state level. One of the things I'm going to do when I become governor, I'm going to fire the top 3 layers of leadership, because we need to change the culture quickly. And they are ineffective and inefficient in supporting Nevadans and their needs. And we certainly can do better. The other thing I'm going to do is a 10% budget cut. Well, why do we do a 10% budget cut? Well, we do a 10% budget cut because that forces the eliminations of programs that don't work. I talked to a legislature not long ago, and I asked him, well, how do you decide what programs to cut? His response to me says, well, we don't do that. We just determine how much more money we're going to need for the coming fiscal year. In other words, they're going to stick their hand back in your pocket for more money in taxes. That's unacceptable, and we can do better. The other thing I'm going to do to provide that accountability, we're going to have an Office of Inspector General that's going to focus on fraud, waste, and abuse, programs that don't work, and feedback from employees on how to save money and how to do things better.
And how long do you think that this plan of yours would take? People are asking, they want change today. Realistically, what do you think that this plan would take for you to get really engaged and the people of Nevada to start seeing benefits?
I would envision in the first 6 months, I tell people that this is a 2-year program, that my what I call Nevada's Lucky 13 of the things I've committed to. It's about 2 years with a big staff. And I'm going to go out on November 3rd after you elect me as your new governor, and I'm going to hire the best of the best across the nation as department heads. And then we're going to go across the nation and hire the best of the best for the rest of the senior staff. And then we're going to start hitting the ground running, and we're going to develop what I call critical success factors for each department. We're going to find out what's most important for Nevadans in Nevada for that particular department, and we're going to focus on those things, and we're going to develop action plans to improve those that aren't working well. And we're going to do better, and we're going to do it pretty quickly.
Okay, so you brought up critical success factors. That's a term that you've thrown around quite a bit as we've talked. Kind of get into that, and let's talk about your education and that combined with your military service. What those two things combined have created the unique qualities that you have as a leader. Talk about that and why you think it's important and why it's needed so badly right now, not only in Nevada but across the U.S. in political leadership.
Well, I wrote an article, The Importance of Leadership in Politics, and I talk about that in detail. The problem is we politicians, if you look at them, our governor of Sislek right now, all he's ever been is a commissioner. He has no idea how to lead people. He has no idea how to get things done. The Air Force Academy was a leadership lab. That's what I did for 4 years at the Academy. And then I took that leadership lab, that experience in education there, and took it out into the real Air Force, and I managed operations up to 450 people. And so that's the leadership portion of it. But if you look at my military career, I had 11 assignments in 22 years. I probably had 30 different jobs. What does that tell me or tell you? Is that there's a big diversity of my ability to run into a new department and make it successful. The other piece of it is my education. Yes, I have a bachelor's degree with a focus on engineering and math. And then I got a master's of public administration, focusing on working for governments. And then I got a EDS, which is an educational specialist degree, an education degree in human resource development and how people learn. And then the last one was the MBA, which was a master's in business administration from Pepperdine. And what's important about that is that that's where I get the business approach to government. And everywhere I've been, and I've taken over some failing programs, I was able to take my experience in education from Pepperdine, from business standpoint, from public administration and human learning, and the leadership background I have from the military, and bring forces to bear that made life and made organizations much, much improved. I bring a broad breadth of experience and education backed by strong leadership, life and death decisions, focusing on outcomes, focusing on the results. In the military, we didn't get credit for trying and fighting as some of our candidates talk. We got credit for results. And I'm the guy for Nevada who will get her done.
Well, that's one of the things that I've looked at. We've looked at the records of some of these other candidates that are running. So let's start with Sislek. Sislek, we know he's not a leader. He's a follower. If Gavin Newsom's going to do something in California, you can bet your bottom dollar that it's going to happen soon in the state of Nevada. But let's look at these Republican candidates. We've got John Lee, who was a Democrat up until last April a year ago. You've got Joe Lombardo, who is running, who says that he's a Republican, but it doesn't seem like that from his record and what he's done and so on. So what do you think the current group of those running in the state of Nevada, what differentiates you from them?
Well, I tell people they're one-trick ponies. Lombardo, all he's ever done is law enforcement. Joy Gilbert, all he's ever done is fight and done work legal issues. Of course, Lee is a career politician. And then you go on to, you got Guy Knorr, who, he's a business guy, but he's never run government. I've worked in government for 40 years. I know how to move bureaucracies. My broad breadth of experience, I've run over 50 different departments, many of them in failure, over in 20 different agencies. So it's this broad breadth of experience backed up by actual leadership in running big operations. My last job, I tell people, I ran the logistics for the Reagan ballistic missile test site in the South Pacific. That was the Star Wars program that Reagan bought. It was a very important program. I had 7 islands, a launch facility, and 860 people. But what was important about that one is I got there as a subcontractor of my company to a Lockheed Bechtel joint venture. They were going to fire us. I quickly turned it around through the methodology I talked about, leadership and my experience in education, and I was getting maximum bonuses in the last 2 years. It's about being able to jump in, have the intestinal fortitude to do the right thing, and take people on who are in your way, and take people on who are preventing you from doing the right things, and also to fire those that weren't performing, which I had no problem doing, because this is all taxpayer money, and we need to be judicious stewards of Nevada's taxpayer dollar.
Well, one of the questions that comes up time and time again with all these changes you're wanting to make is how much extra is it going to cost? What will it cost extra for the people of Nevada to get the changes you're talking about?
You know, I have to laugh. We're going to save money. You know, when I went to Kwajalein, I think the first year I saved $1 million without breaking a sweat. So we're going to save money. We're going to cut those failing programs. We're going to send them back to the legislature. And if they want them to come back, then they're going to bring laws back to me that have goals and objectives and a sunset provision. If they don't meet the goals and objectives, they sunset at the end of the year. But we're not going to have that problem of needing more money. We're going to stop going back to the taxpayers' pocket and spending more money. And the schools don't need more money. We've shown that. The schools need accountability. I'm going to provide accountability, and we're going to get her done.
One of the big issues is
we want to talk about, if you all like the story that I'm telling, would appreciate if you could donate, $25, $50 so that we can get out to others that have the same interest that you do, is to stop doing this insanity with career politicians and come up with someone different like me. I will revolutionize government in Nevada, and I will revolutionize politics. You have my word.
Let's talk about the rurals. Position on the rurals and teaching them and services, especially, medical services, dental services, so on, and education. What's your plan for the rural?
Well, again, I wrote an op-ed that's on my website. It's the Forgotten Rurals. And career politicians, they glide through the different rurals. They do that pretty smile. They make promises. And once they vote for them, never to be heard from again. In my op-ed, I talk about various things. One of the things is a commitment to get out there once a year to each of the rurals, which I will do personally with my key staff members. Have a dedicated staff member as part of the Office of Inspector General that actually has 2-3 rural areas that they're responsible to visit on a quarterly basis to understand their needs and their wants and what's working and what's not working, and then bring that back. And we'll develop action plans to fix those things. But we can't continue to forget the rurals, and we're not going to do that anymore because they deserve better. The other thing is that the services, doctors, nurses, social services, on and on. Right now, we have trouble getting those people to go out there. Well, why is that? Well, there's not incentives. Right now, we spend money to educate social workers for the state of Nevada and other educational programs. And they're supposed to serve, they're supposed to do payback in terms of serving in the rurals. But the Nevada government doesn't hold them accountable. In the military, we had assignments that weren't cherry assignments, that weren't the most favored assignments. I went to Korea for a year. Well, my follow-on assignment was Hawaii. We're going to do something similar in Nevada so that the people getting educated and paid for by the state of Nevada will go out to the rurals for a year and a half, and then they'll be able to come back to the city of their choice. And we're going to continue to do that throughput so that the rurals get the best of the best. And we're going to provide incentives for people to go out there and work out there. So for those people that may make a certain amount in Reno, going to the rurals, maybe they'll make more. We just need to incentivize it. People don't look out of the box to solve the problem. It's this peanut butter spread, one size fits all. We're not going to do that. We're not going to forget the rurals. I'm visiting every year, and I'm going to have staffers. They're going to be out there quarterly.
One of the questions that came up, Tom, is why do you think that your military expertise and experience, how does that benefit the people of Nevada?
Well, there is no other candidate that has the leadership skills, that hasn't been through a leadership lab like the Academy. At the Academy, and I don't usually go into this much detail, but everybody that went to the Academy started out as the lowly dually at the beginning and at the Air Force Academy. And then once they were a sophomore, then they were in charge of a certain number of people. And then as a junior, they had more people. And then as a senior, some of them were flight commanders in charge of, 20 or 30 people. Some were squadron commanders in charge of 100 people. And some were group commanders. So you had this varying level of experience in leading people and actually getting them to do well. I would tell you that my squadron, when we were seniors, We took care of our own people, and we were the squadron of the year. Why were we the squadron of the year? Because we focused on outcomes. We focused on stopping the ridiculous and insane things that people were doing, and we got her done. And we were for 1977, 24th Squadron was the squadron of the year. So I have that background and experience in leadership, and then I took it into the Air Force. I managed people and staffs from 10 people all the way up to 450 people. I managed programs. I managed a 5-year design construction program, $834 million that I had to develop from scratch. And I had to get people who were not willing to work. And in that case, I fired 2 GS-13s, a 12, and 2 11s, and I got them out of there. And people said it couldn't be done. We got a program out. We got it done. And right now, if you go to Travis Air Force Base, it looks just like downtown. And that was the vision we had. And we're going to have a vision for the state that basically says we are going to take care of voters every step of the way.
Okay, well, the military background helps you. Why is it a detriment? Why do you think the others are lacking because they don't have it? What don't they bring to the table?
Well, it's the ability to motivate people. It's the ability to motivate people to greater things. I mean, George S. Patton was particularly savvy at doing that. You had Schwarzkopf, you had General Horner in the Desert Storm. But it's the ability to motivate people. But it's not this thing that, we got Biden doing, leading from behind. It's being out front with a vision, being out front with goals and objectives, and being out front running interference for staff. And you focus on staff's ability to get the things done. You focus on their successes. You reward their successes and ignores their shortcomings, because that's not where the outcomes are coming from.
One of the comments that has been made is that from time to time, as you're going through and doing these lives, you get a little shrill and you get a little loud. Explain to the people why you're so passionate about what you're.
Because I've seen it. I know how much better it can be. I mean, we've got probably, I don't know the total number, but probably 1,500 employees in Nevada, and many are being held back. I had a woman I knew. She was put in the corner for 7 years because she was too smart. So I have been to, what does it say? I have been to the mountain, whatever. But the bottom line is, I know how great Nevada can be. I know how good our programs can be. I know how great the services can be provided to voters. And I see it in my mind. And these guys are in the way. And I don't think any one of these candidates that are also running, the one-trick ponies, can even get to that point. I'm passionate because we can do better.
I agree. I'm tired of status quo. I think a lot of Americans are.
I've been to interviews, and they ask me questions, and one of them says, if you're looking for someone to preserve the status quo, please go to the next candidate, because I'm not your guy. I'm the guy that's going to make a difference. Okay. And one other thing they ask me in interviews, they ask me, well, tell us one time when you failed, and tell us about it and what you learned. Well, let's think about this. If you failed, it means you quit.
Yep.
I never quit. And I promise Nevadans, I will never quit until we get you where I promised you'd be.
One of the things that a lot of people are concerned about is the career politicians. There's a lot of corruption in the state of Nevada. There's a lot of corruption we're learning everywhere. How do we get to the bottom of that? And what's your plan to solve it in the state of Nevada?
Well, the saying everyone uses is follow the money. I'm going to audit every department, and we're going to root out the fraud, waste, and abuse and turn it over to the Office of Inspector General. And wherever there's criminal acts, we're going to prosecute them to the full extent of the law, and they're going to go be making little rocks out of big rocks. And everywhere, I mean, I've heard stories from the cabs in Las Vegas to Pahrump and everywhere else in the state that's just the way of doing business, of greasing the palm. That is criminal and unacceptable. We're going to root it out. We're going to find it, and we're going to stamp it out every step of the way. But we're going to audit every department. We're going to audit every sheriff's office, and we're going to get to the root of the problems, and we're going to get rid of them.
So let's talk about, we've been talking about your opponents in the primary. Let's talk about your opponent this fall. After you've won the election, what is the biggest harm that Steve Sislek has committed against the state of Nevada?
Oh, there's so many. Shutting down Nevada just because California did. mask mandates because California did, vaccine mandates. I mean, that's all criminal. And then prohibiting Nevadans to choose the type of treatment they have for COVID. That's criminal. That's practicing medicine without a license. It is unacceptable. No one, I mean, for the last 10, 20, 30 years, we've always talked about no one comes between the patient and their doctor. We've had Sislek insert themselves in the middle of that whole operation. That will never happen under my administration, and we will do everything we can to pass a law to prohibit that in the future. You know, I think 5 years from now, people are going to come back and say, well, COVID, it was just a cold. You know, just like the flu. You know, flu symptoms and flu complications causes people die too. So we just need to stop treating this as something different and let the doctors and the patients figure out what's best for them based on their risk group and what they think is mutually beneficial, and get the government out of people's lives. And that's my whole goal. I don't want government in people's lives. Government needs to stay out of it. We got government telling us too many things to do. Everywhere you go, the government's trying to tell us what to do. I mean, right now, you know, you go and get a concealed carry license. You got to pay money. You got to wait 10. And that's unacceptable. We're going to do 5 days. We're not going to have fees for a right, and mothers, spouses, daughters who are being stalked or being abused. The sheriffs are going to be on charge to figure out how they're going to protect those women, because these court protection edicts are worthless. Basically, what they say is, oh, we can charge the guy with something else after he kills you. Unacceptable. We need to protect those groups, and especially anybody else that's being threatened or abused, and the sheriffs need to figure out how to do that. And those agencies that want to have gun-free zones, go for it. You just have to have armed protection in absence of people with guns. Armed protection for agencies that want to have a no-gun.
Well, and added on to that, not just that, but then they're both criminally and civilly liable for any harm for anybody that's harmed while on their property. Correct? That's the concept, right?
And so if they've got to provide protection. You know, I feel as governor, if I don't provide protection for Nevadans to be able to work, play, and live the way they want to, I have failed as a governor. And that's the first thing we're going to do before we do education. We're going to make sure our streets are safe. I don't know if people out there in the audience know this, but the crime rate in Las Vegas is double that of New York City. Every year Lombardo's been in charge, the crime rate has increased. But he will tell you that, well, he's done this and that and the other thing. I don't buy it. How can your crime rate be double in New York City if you're really on top of things? That's my opinion.
So you're saying that there's no way that Lombardo can keep the people of Nevada safe if he can't keep the people of Clark County safe.
And the other piece of it is, if he can't run a law enforcement department, how do we expect him to run those other 15 or 20 or 30 departments in Nevada successfully?
Exactly. Because
successfully is the operative word.
Right. And that's the key, is that what we've looked at is that anyone can run a department badly. Anyone can do that, right? When you've got one that you're running and you're doing it badly, the expectation is that when you expand on that, when you grow, that you're not going to be able to keep up with it. Do you think Lombardo has the capability of maintaining the safety for the people of Nevada?
Well, your ability doesn't change from one organization to another. When you have one department that has one set of rules and you operate a certain way, you can't take that same thing to another department. Again, I go back to critical success factors. You got to understand what the critical success factors. You know, we're failing miserably in Clark County. I mean, our crime rate is double in New York City. We are not meeting critical success factors. I mean, there's places in Nevada, in Clark County, where people just won't go, and that's unacceptable. And they're the ability to run other departments when you can't run just the basic police department. I don't know how you can do it.
One of the other questions that's really, now this is probably, and we're in the last 15, 20 minutes of the show here tonight. One of the things that's come up time and time again over the last 2 years is the 2020 election. So the questions are, do you believe that there was election fraud in the state of Nevada in 2020?
Well, there was absolutely election fraud. And I believe that if it would have been a proper election, we'd have a different president in the White House, and we wouldn't be having 8 and 9 and 10% inflation. We wouldn't have $5 and $10 gas prices, and we wouldn't have people suffering because of the high inflation and their inability to get government services. So yes, that was a problem. And my intent in when I'm elected your next governor is I'm going to audit the 2020 election. I'm going to audit the 2022 election. And like everything we did in the military, it was about lessons learned. And we're going to audit every subsequent election after that I'm governor. And it could be 4 or 5 different elections, depending on how you like what I do. But we're going to audit every election for lessons learned. And we're going to apply those lessons learned and make sure that we have fair and impartial elections. I'm for paper ballots. Get rid of the machines. I'm for also hiring election supervisors. Right now, election supervisors are chosen by the city manager. They are not impartial. So right. I think the voters should decide who their election manager
should be an elected position.
We're going to eliminate sanctuary cities. That's got to go as step one.
Well, one of the things that Sislek really impeded on the people of Nevada during his tenure as governor is their rights. So let's talk about that for the last 10 to 15 minutes here. Let's talk about rights. Let's start with the first A, second A, and just go on down the line. And those that have been violated by government leaders from around the country, not just Sislek. What do you intend to do? And let's start with mask mandates and so on, and vaccine mandates. What do you intend to do, and how do you intend to work with the legislature to ensure that the rights of the people are always put above the wants of the politician?
Well, first, no governor should have unimpeded emergency authority for more than 30 days. I think in Nevada, because we're such a big state, it'll take 30 days to get the legislature together to come up with a path forward. You know, I will make recommendations to them, but after 30 days, the legislature ought to be deciding what the outcomes are. And if I don't agree with them, I'm going to veto them. But 30 days, governor shouldn't have any more authority than that. And we should not be able to continue on in this matter like we have done in the past. Mask mandates, again, to what end? I mean, if you read the box on the mask, it says they don't work against viruses. Oh, COVID's a virus. Doesn't work. But people don't like that answer. Vaccines. Every day I see more and more articles about the problems people are having because of the vaccines. And then we shut down the Nevada economy. You know, Florida kept their economy open, and their outcomes are no different than those people that shut them down. So basically, not only did we have COVID in many states, but we had terrible economies because they shut the economies down. People are out of jobs. People can't afford rent. People can't afford to go to work because they shut their economies down. And across the U.S., it just put us in a terrible shape because it was unnecessary. And the government is still fighting. They want to continue on with the mask mandates on airplanes, which, as an engineer, I understand. A typical hospital probably has 3 or 4 air exchanges every hour or some number like that, which means that the existing air is recirculated and refiltered 3 or 4 times every hour or more. In an airplane, it's like 100 times it's recirculated. So that everything that's of a hazard is filtered out. So the airplanes are probably one of the safest places to be. So we have done things and we've lost what I call the common sense approach. People cannot forget common sense because without common sense, you can't produce successful outcomes.
Well, and the other thing is that people have gotten to the point where they're afraid to speak out. In our country, they're afraid to speak out. And people like myself and like yourself that are willing to stand become targets. So when it comes to free speech, what will you do as governor to ensure that free speech is protected, not only in the workplace, but online and so?
Can you still hear me? Because my earpiece said something to me.
Oh, I'm sorry. The question for you is what will you do to protect a person's free speech rights, both online, at work, and elsewhere, where they want to speak up and give their opinion and not be silenced or not be vindicated and not, be attacked for making that public?
Well, I'm gonna do very much what Governor DeSantis did. Is basically I'm going to hold those businesses accountable. Businesses should not be in the business of politics and making inputs one way or another. I don't believe that anybody in the United States should ever be shut down. We used to be in the mode of live and let live, and everybody, sticks and stones may hurt my bones, but words will never hurt me. But we seem to have lost that, and everybody's worried about exactly how you say each and every word, and we need to get away from that, and we have to support freedom of speech. I am absolutely adamant. I applaud Elon Musk for taking over Twitter so that it can become a free speech platform. I support President Trump for trying to make a new Truth Social to have a free speech platform, because this has always been a free speech country. A free country does not shut down citizens' ability to speak. That is unacceptable to me, and we have to do better. And I'm going to champion every step of the way wherever that has a problem, and I'm going to be there with the news media until we fix that free speech issue.
The governor of Oklahoma the other day made a very heated comment, and that comment was, "I will sign any pro-life bill that crosses my desk." What's your position on that?
I am unapologetically 100% pro-life, and that's the bottom line.
So in the same case, you would do the same thing. If
yes.
pro-life bill crosses your desk, you'll sign it as well.
Absolutely.
Perfect.
There's too many parents out there that want to adopt, and we can do better by our families. And the life is sacrosanct, and we should protect it in every aspect.
Okay, let's get back to Sislek for a moment. What's your position on protecting the Second Amendment, and how far does that go? What rights? When I say rights, I mean, what capabilities do you, the right to bear is clear, but do you see limitations? Do you see the need for red flag laws? Let's go into that for a moment.
No, the Constitution is very clear. We years later don't get to interpret the Constitution. It's a right. And that's why I said we're going to do better than 10 days in getting concealed weapons permits to people. And if it's a right, why are we charging people? I will eliminate the fees for getting CCWs for people. And those women who are abused, who are under threat, and those who are being stalked, or any other ones that's been threatened with bodily harms credibly, the sheriff's office needs to find ways to protect them until they can get them a CCW. So it's not acceptable that we have to say, and I've heard too many stories of these various groups having a protective order, but being killed, but they had a protective order.
Right.
Sheriffs need to do better and protect those people until we can figure it out. And I'm going to support and champion programs that do that. I am responsible for the safety of every Nevadan, and I take that very seriously.
What's your position on constitutional carry for the state of Nevada?
My goal is to make Nevada a constitutional carry state, period. End of discussion. The other thing I want to do is I'm going to try to work with ATF to get a waiver so that we can have silencers in Nevada. There's no reason we can't have silencers. We keep talking about passing laws to prevent shootings. The bottom line is law-abiding citizens aren't the ones that are committing crimes. Criminals are. And criminals, by definition, don't follow the law.
You use that common sense.
For people that don't follow the law. Insanity.
Tom, you got to stop using that common sense. It's only going to confuse them.
That's unacceptable. I mean, it's just oxymoron to say that, well, we're going to pass more laws because, we know that the people following the laws are doing okay, but we're going to pass more laws for the criminals who don't follow the laws anyway. Give me a break. So I'm passionate about that one.
I can tell. Again, we go back to your service in the military. People are really interested in that. And so kind of give an overview of what your position was. In particular, I learned, I did some research this afternoon just to find out what it meant. Talk to people about the reasons behind you receiving 6 meritorious medals and what that means, the importance of that inside the military, especially the Air Force.
Well, I mean, I usually am not very comfortable talking about.
I'm bragging on Tom. That's a humble brag. I'm doing a humble brag for Tom. He doesn't like to talk about this, but I think it's important for people. When I realized how important these medals were and what they mean and the importance to them,
I would tell you the average officer in the Air Force probably only got 3 meritorious service medals, and I had 6. And I did so because I was always the guy who produced results. I was the guy who would get her done, and I always found a way. And I was known ever since I was a lieutenant as the man with a plan. No matter what it was, I could figure it out and get her done. And from getting a meritorious service medal as a lieutenant in Korea to getting one in Hawaii and Virginia, and I had a boss in the Azores where I ran a 450-man operation, and he went through 2 iterations to make the people at the board who select you to get an award like that, to convince them how much I contributed to the mission at Lodges Air Force Base in the Azores.
One of the things, Tom, that, and this is an interesting question. I wasn't going to put this up initially, but I think I will now, is Joe Biden in the late fall came forward and said that we were going to have a winter of death. That really didn't materialize. However, now we're learning that we may have a fall of death, and we've got huge potential for food shortages, and as the supply chain issue worsens. As governor, what would you do in the state of Nevada to help the people in your state?
Well, I think that's one of the things that we have to look from a logistics standpoint, which I've done for years, is we just have to make sure the shelves are kept full, and we got to find ways to facilitate businesses' effort to do that. One of the things that I would do is sit down with all the key businesses for key items such as groceries, gasoline, housing supplies, and things like that, and figure out where the issues are. And then, people forget that governors have a big bully pulpit. There's only 50 of us. And as we have this bully pulpit, we get out there and I'm just going to sue Biden. I talk about, 3 packs that I want to have. I want to have a pack to support referendums that I think the people want me to do. I want a pack to support an army of lawyers, because that's how I'm going to sue the federal government when they're doing things that are unconstitutional, or anyone else that's violating the law or the Nevada Constitution. And I'm going to have a referendum. I'm going to have a pack to support conservative candidates, because we can't continue to go on and say, well, let's hire rhinos because we have to work with them. Well, Nevadans, let me ask you this. You have had rhinos for the last 40 years. How have they done for you? I think the answer is horribly. We're going to find conservative candidates. I'm going to support them in the primaries. We're going to pick the best 2, and we're going to find a message that sells in their district to get conservative candidates elected, so that you have a government that pursues common sense solutions and successful outcomes.
We're going to wrap things up tonight. And Tom, let's start by talking to the people about the donations. If you want to give to Tom, if you believe in what Tom is doing, please go to electech.com. There's a form there. You can give 5, 10, 15, 20. You can give $1,000 if you want. But we start out as low as possible. Every dollar helps. And the message here is true, is that the Tom Heck campaign for governor is truly unique in what we're doing. We're not doing the standard things. We're not doing yard signs. We're not doing banners. They're a waste of money. If we're doing that in a campaign, imagine what the Heck campaign will do with inside the halls of the state capitol in Carson City, a place that I'm sure that Sislek has not seen the entire time that he's been the governor of Nevada.
He's been in Las Vegas.
He likes to stay in Las Vegas. So with that being in mind, is if you've got something that you want to get off of your chest, feel free to call Tom at any point. Tom, what's that number they can call you at 24/7?
775-393-0500. And I actually answer my phone, and I want to hear from you. I want to hear what your concerns are so I can address them.
Now, I said 24/7. That's marketing.
Rings on Instagram.
During the day. Anyway, so give Tom a call. If you've got a question about what is going on in the state, what his plans are for the state and so on, or if you'd like to invite him to come speak to your group, give him a call at 775-393-0500. That's 775-393-0500. Again, we've been with Tom Heck tonight, Digital Town Hall. Tom, I'm going to give you the floor. Let's go ahead and close things out and tell people your stump speech for what you're going to do day one once you become governor.
Well, I keep telling people it's not day one for me. It's November 3rd after you elect me. Going to go around the country and hire the best of the best for the department heads, because Nevada deserves the best of the best. And then we're going to go around and hire the best of the best for the senior leadership and for me and my governor's office. Day one, we're going to eliminate the mandates, the vaccines, and we're going to make a commitment. We're never going to shut down government again. We're not going to shut down businesses again. And we're going to solve problems, and we're going to focus on what the problems are, and we're going to find common sense solutions that produce successful outcomes. I have 5 pillars of my whole administration. I want to be the voice for the silent majority. I want to truth tell at the expense of political correctness. I always want to do the right thing. And bottom line, I want to common sense solutions that produce successful outcomes. And I just want you all to know that I'm running because career politicians have failed us. And given the opportunity, they're going to fail us again and again and again. I'm here to make a difference. I'm here to give you an opportunity for a better choice, for someone who's truly qualified and someone who has the experience to produce successful outcomes, because I will get her done. Thank you so much for your time. Check out my website. If you have questions, call me. Please help. And if you want something different, as they say, the same thing over and over again, that's insanity. It's time for us to do something different in Nevada. And I know those of you that are listening want something different. I'm the guy to be your next governor. Thank you all. Good night. God bless America. God bless the state of Nevada. And God bless all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being a part of the Tom Heck Digital Town Hall, where Tom is giving the people of Nevada their voices back. Join Tom every Monday night at 7 p.m. as he discusses his plans for Nevada directly with you, the people of Nevada. Do you still have questions? Call Tom directly, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. at 775-393-0500. That's 775-393-0500. And yes, Tom actually answers his phone. If you'd like to join the Tom Heck for Governor campaign as a volunteer, to make a donation, or both, please visit electtech.com. Thank you again for being a part of Democracy in Action, and only on the Tom Heck Digital Town Hall. Mark your calendar now and plan to join Tom again next Monday night at 7 at electtech.com, as well as these video streaming platforms.